Welcome one, welcome all to Showdown in the Badlands. I waited for all the neutral cards to come out before conducting this card review. So let's take a look at all the neutral cards in mana order. Start with Miracle Salesman. 1 mana 2/2 Death Rattle, get a tradable Snake Oil. The Snake Oil is a card that does nothing without spell damage, but can be traded for 1 mana. So it's basically a 1 mana 2/2 that gets you a 1 mana draw card. Though it comes at a slight downside because the 1 mana draw card is shuffled into your deck, where at some point you'll draw it and then it's a 1 mana draw card. With spell damage, it could be quite good. Which does actually mean that in your spell school mage deck, you could actually use this because you can deal, you can get like spell damage +7 with Sif. So 0 mana deal 7 could work. It could just work as a generally good card as well. 1 mana 2/2 draw a okay card. You know, not bad. Alongside Tram Mechanic, 1 mana 2/1 Death Rattle, get a Barrel of Sludge. Handle with care. The Barrel of Sludge is a 2 mana Fel spell. When this is played, discarded, or destroyed, deal 3 damage to the lowest health enemy. It's a Fel spell, which again is actually pretty decent for the Spell School Mage deck. You can put your Fel School into Spell School Mage now. Worth trying out in that deck. Again, kind of a generally good card. It's a 1 mana card that has a early game impact, can stem the bleeding against aggressive decks. If you're an aggressive deck, you can play this early and not fall behind on card advantage because the card generates a card. Cool. Worth noting that it's good with discard Warlock, if that were a thing. Which it looks like it could be a thing. Bunny Stomper, 2 mana 1/3. Beast, your beasts have rush. Currently, I can't really think of a use for this because there's not that many really useful synergies. We'll have to see. And sure, there's always things you could use it with, but to like have the card in your deck, like it better be for a really good reason. And I don't currently find a really good reason to have it in the deck. Cactus Rager, hilarious. It's 2 mana 5/1 poisonous. Clearly bad due to the 1 health. Funny. Tri-Skill Deputy, 2 mana 2/2 Naga. Battle Cry, the next time you draw a spell, get a copy of it. This is actually a pretty good card. It's 2 mana 2/2, get a good card, because the cards you put in your deck are good. If you have specific spells in your deck that you've only put a small number of, you could actually specifically get 2 of a spell that you normally couldn't get much of, or perhaps 3 of a spell that you want that you couldn't get much of. Hilariously, I'm not entirely sure if this is that funny, but hilariously, you could, shuffle the Snake Oil into your deck, and then that day where you get a Snake Oil, you get another Snake Oil. Useful if you want 0 mana, deal 0 damage spells. Which, less ridiculous than it sounds, because with spell damage, 0 mana deal 0 is pretty good. Gold Panner, 2 mana 1/2. At the end of your turn, draw a card. Back in my day, Nat Pagle had to get changed from 50% chance to draw a card at the end of your turn to at the start of the turn because the flip was so impactful. So now, we can just draw a card. Guaranteed. So, at the very least, 2 mana 1/2 draw a card, not bad, but what's really good is when you actually get more of it. It's kind of like Mana-Tide Totem. Mana-Tide Totem that comes out 1 turn earlier, pretty sweet. It is slow, bad tempo, and if the opponents play early game minions, Gold Panner isn't very good, but Gold Panner will, at the very least, always pay for itself, though it comes at the cost of tempo. Potential high rolls in that it could get you multiple cards. Hard to find a deck for it, but hard to say that it won't be used. Just a generally good, decent use. Probably at its best in tempo decks. You play your early tempo. You certainly want a 1-drop with it, and then you play your Gold Panner behind it. Greedy Partner, 2 mana 2/3. Battlecry, if you're holding another 2-cost card, get a coin. That's pretty good. It's 2 mana 2/3, which generates a card. So a coin, I would consider a card. Especially if you're using a deck that really wants the coin. Which could be like a deck that wants spells. It could be a deck that wants to ramp to 4. You do have to specifically line this up with another 2-cost, which is tough because when you're mulliganing cards, you usually don't want to keep multiple 2-drops. You want the curve, you want the 1-drop, the 2-drop, the 3-drop. You don't want to save 2/2. So I get the feeling that Greedy Partner and most of the partners aren't going to see play because this is a pretty heavy restriction to be holding specifically the same cost card. This follows a cycle of partners. You know, let's actually look at the partners cycle. The next partner is at 3 mana, Line Dance Partner. 3 mana 3/2. Battlecry, if you're holding another 3-cost card, summon a random 3-cost minion. So if we assume the random 3-cost minion is a 3/3, it's 3 mana to get a 3/3 and a 3/2. You know, that's pretty good, but the problem is consistently being able to get that 3 mana, 3/3, and 3/2. Just probably not quite high enough of a payoff. And the thing that's definitely not enough of a payoff is Rowdy Partner, the 4 mana 4/3 Battlecry. If you're holding another 4-cost card, deal 4 damage. That wasn't necessarily even good enough at the 4 mana 4/4 deal 4 damage, which has been printed before, kind of. So, yeah, that's the partner cycle. Howdy Finn, 2 mana 2/3 Murloc. Whenever your hand has less than 3 cards in it, get a random Murloc. What an insane card. Wow. This is a 2 mana 2/3 draw 3 Murlocs, generate 3 Murlocs if you have an empty hand. And it's even better than that because you generate the Murlocs and then you play the Murlocs and you get more Murlocs. What a card. If you have an aggressive deck, I think Howdy Finn fits well into it as like the card that you can just, at the end, when you've run out of cards, you can just play Howdy Finn and a bunch of other cards with it. It's your last gasp, your last ditch effort. Great card. Certainly if there's a Murloc deck around, Howdy Finn would fit right into it. And there are with the Clownfish and whatnot. Maybe Shaman Murloc's back. We have covered Kobold Miner in the past, along with the Excavate idea. However, with all the neutral cards coming out, there were less excavations than expected. So, I guess in short, I really don't think that this excavation deck is going to work when the only neutral cards to support it are Burrow Buster, the 5 mana 6/4 Rush with Excavate a Treasure, and that 2 mana 1/1 with Excavate a Treasure. I was expecting, like, perhaps there might be another good neutral out there, but there isn't. So it's gonna all be on the classes that excavate to have good excavation cards. But yeah, currently it looks like with these neutral cards as the baseline, you're gonna have to have some really good class excavation cards to build a good excavation deck. Excavate, for those who missed it the first time around, is you excavate. The first thing you excavate is a common treasure, then a rare treasure, then an epic treasure, and then a legendary treasure. A treasure being like a 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, good for the card, like good effect for how much it costs of 1, 2, and 3. And then with certain classes at the 4 mana, you get the legendary treasure, which is presumably why you would want to build an excavate deck. So we'll have to see on a lot of these the class-specific cards, whether or not they're worth going the excavation route, but I'm not holding out too many hopes for that. Saloon Brewmaster, 2 mana 2/2 Battlecry, return a friendly minion to your hand, give it +2/+2. So that is better Pandaren Brewmaster, a youthful Brewmaster rather, and I've played with that Brewmaster a number of times, so much that I think that Saloon Brewmaster can certainly be great. Could be really good with cards that, well, with one specific card that was also revealed, which I will just show right now. Azurite Chain Gang, the 4 mana 2/3 taunt, Battlecry, and Quick Draw. Summon a copy of this. The way Quick Draw works is not only when it is drawn, but when it enters your hand, you get the effect. So if you were to draw the Azurite Chain Gang, inspired by Serenite Chain Gang, then you would get 3/2/3s for 4 mana if you played it the turn you drew it. What's really insane is when you play it with that Brewmaster, because it enters your hand after being bounced from play, it becomes a 4 mana 4/5 taunt, and you summon 3 4/5 taunts for 4 mana. That's pretty sweet. We'll see if there's enough hand buffing loving cards, but that could be really good for the Chain Gang and perhaps for the Brewmaster. Trapdoor Spider, 2 mana 1/2 beast with stealth poisonous. After your opponent plays a minion, attack it. That is clearly arena filler. It reminds me a lot of Gangster, the 2 mana 4/2 stealth, which after your opponent plays a minion, attack it. Whelp Wrangler, 2 mana 2/3. At the end of your turn, get a 1/2 Whelp with taunt. Note that that is into your hand. That is a good card if dragons matter. I actually misread this card originally when I was like looking to, preview the review. I thought it was 3 mana, and I was like, oh, well, that's absolute trash. Well, for 2 mana, if there were a dragon deck, I could see it. There's currently no dragon deck, no indication that a dragon deck will be good, but, put this on the back burner when there is a dragon deck. Bounty Board, 3 mana 0/5. Your excavate, quick draw, tradable, and legendary cards cost 1 less. So this is clearly going to be a combo deck if there's a bunch of good quick draw in a certain deck. Currently, I don't see anything that would fit that description. This is a really specific combo card, but presumably there's some sort of idea to perhaps play multiple bounty boards and then play multiple quick draw cards. But given that there's actually been a few quick draw cards that have been revealed as high mana cost, seems unlikely for bounty board to be good. This is clearly a really specific combo card, which hard to say without seeing the whole set, but I find very doubtful that there will be a combo that uses this bounty board. Eroded Sediment, 3 mana 4/3. Battlecry, if you played an elemental last turn, discover an elemental from the past. So there's clearly some elemental synergy out here. This card is not going to make an elemental deck good. It's an okay elemental. Might fit into the, elemental decks if there's a really good payoff elemental, of which currently not seen, but perhaps when we see the Shaman cards, maybe we'll be like, maybe I will fit a Rooted Sediment into my deck, just to fit the elemental count. Flint Firearm, 3 mana 3/3 legendary. Battlecry, get a random quick draw card. If you play it this turn, repeat this. So this card, you'd want to play it late, play a bunch of quick draw cards. Pow, pow, pow. I see it as 3 mana 3/3, get a bad card, which this day is not, in this day and age, isn't very good compared to like the 3 mana 3/4s that you can actually get a good card on. The benefit of this card is that you can get multiple bad cards, or multiple cards. I shouldn't call the quick draw cards bad. But yeah, seems unlikely to be good. Gaslight Gatekeeper, 3 mana 3/4 undead. Battlecry, shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw that many cards. This is Plot Twist, which was a Warlock specific card for 2 mana. So for 1 more mana, you get a 3/4 alongside the Plot Twist. That's pretty generically good. You'd want to fit this into a deck that wanted to go for specific cards, such as Excavate, such as Quick Draw. So it fits into this set pretty fittingly. Good for combo decks that want to specifically draw their combo pieces when they don't have combo cards in their hand. The tricky thing, though, is, you'd have to have a small amount of combo pieces, because otherwise you couldn't play it while you have the combo pieces in your hand. Plot Twist was really only used in combo-specific decks. So too, I would think Gaslight Gatekeeper would be. In specifically trying to find certain cards that aren't necessarily, that you don't need to collect all of them in order to play them well, because, the benefit of storing up cards is lost when you shuffle them into your deck. Rattlesnake, 3 mana 1/5 beast. At the end of your turn, load 2 bullets that deal 1 damage each. Death Rattle, fire at random enemies. So at the end of your turn, this becomes a 3 mana 1/5 Death Rattle, deal 2 random damage. And if it survives the turn, then it deals 4 random damage. Cool, but slow, low attack, high health, which makes it, somewhat likely for it to actually deal 4 damage randomly as a Death Rattle, but ultimately not a big deal. 3 mana 4/3 High Noon Duelist. Death Rattle, both players draw. Destroy the card that costs less. So you'd want to put this in a big deck, theoretically, so that you would draw the big mana card and they would destroy a card. Maybe they destroy a valuable combo piece. But more realistically, this is trash. Horseshoe Slinger. 3 mana 2/2 mech. Battlecry. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy minion. Quick draw. And one of its neighbors. It's got the classic difficulty of being a responsive card. You don't want to necessarily play the card when your opponent doesn't fulfill the condition. They don't necessarily have 2 minions in play. Even if they did have 2 minions in play, the 3 mana 2/2 to cleave your opponent, deal 4 damage to random enemy minions. Not so good. Pretty bad card. We got the Ogre Gang theme set here. The cycle, rather. Starting with Ogre Gang Outlaw, 3 mana 4/4 Rush, 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. This is a big improvement on Ogre Brute, which did not have Rush. However, it is doubtful that it is still good enough in this day and age. We have Ogre Gang Rider, a 4 mana 3/6 Rush, 50% chance to give your hero +3 attack this turn instead of attacking. Once again, doubtful that that's good. These cards just generally, at least they're fast because they have Rush, but that's really all they have going for them, and the stats aren't that exciting. Ogre Gang Ace, the 5 mana 5/4 Rush. Whenever this attacks, gain Divine Shield, but 50% chance to gain lifesteal instead. Most of the time, you're probably hoping for the Divine Shield. The 5 mana 5/4 Rush Divine Shield is actually quite good, but sometimes you'll rush it into an enemy minion and you'll only have lifesteal. Certainly, sometimes you'll want the lifesteal, but the times that you want the Divine Shield and the lifesteal kind of goes into different decks, kind of goes into many different situations. Very iffy. All in all, this might not be reliable enough to actually see play in anything. The big payoff for playing these unremarkable cards is Kingpin Pud. 6 mana 6/7. Battlecry, resurrect your Ogre Gang, give them Wind Fury. Now, those Ogre cards, they all have Rush, so they immediately do stuff. But boy, do you not want to play a deck with 6 of these Ogres and then play Kingpin Pud. That is a really bad deck idea. All the cards are okay stats for the cost, but to put 7 cards into your deck for this kind of Ogre theme, I can't imagine it. Dang Blasted Elemental, 4 mana 3/3 Elemental, taunt Death Rattle, deal 2 damage to all minions except friendly elementals. Clearly there's some sort of setup for an elemental deck. I find it unlikely that a 4 mana 3/3 with a small AoE is going to be the card that makes the elemental deck great. Pretty unlikely to be good. I'll re-review the Sheriff Barrel Brim just because I actually thought I underrated it in the first review. The 4 mana 4/4, this is, the Badlands Jail, which is the location which makes a minion go dormant for 3 turns and has 3 charges. Sheriff Barrel Brim is actually a very flexible removal card in the sense that if you make a minion go dormant for 9 turns, which you easily can if you just save the jail for the card that you keep, which you jailed the first time, yeah, that's rather good. The 20 or less health is kind of rough, but in decks with weapons, in Warlock, you can get to 20 or less health easily. I'm a little more liking the Sheriff Barrel Brim when I thought about it, in the sense that it's 4 mana 4/4 that removes a card, and it's even better than removing a minion because you can upgrade the minion that you decide to go dormant. You can even have 2 minions go dormant for the same time because, you jail one minion, you jail another minion, and they can both be jailed temporarily. Snake Oil Seller, 4 mana 4/5 Naga, Death Rattle, shuffle 2 tradable Snake Oils into your opponent's deck. It amusingly will turn off Highlander for a little bit, but yeah, it's just a 4 mana 4/5 with a minor benefit. Certainly nothing like Bad Luck Albatross back in the day, because the Snake Oil is not a terrible card to draw, especially later. It's just 1 mana to draw a different card instead. Seems unlikely to be good. Cavalry Wrestler was reviewed on the first review, but real quick, it's a 5 mana 3/4, draw a beast, it costs 3 less. Could be good in Hunter, ramp yourself up to beasts. Sunspot Dragon, 6 mana 6/6 dragon, tradable, lifesteal, quick draw, deal 6 damage. I actually think this is a generally good card that I'd consider in a number of control decks that wanted some sort of life gaining option. Certainly a decent dragon, if a dragon deck were to be good. I would nearly always consider this a 6 mana 6/6 deal 6 damage with lifesteal. You can just trade it away when you draw it early, and then you'll draw it later, and you'll get the 6/6/6 deal 6 damage, which is a strong card. When you draw the card, it's probably worth changing your plan just to play Sunspot Dragon, because that is a pretty good effect when it goes off. I don't really see this card being like a mainstay or a monster in every single deck, but in really specific decks, maybe even the specificness of it would be Highlander value control deck or Dragon deck, but I could see it in those decks. Azurite Giant, 8 mana 8/8 elemental, costs 1 less for each turn in a row you've played an elemental. So clearly there's an elemental theme going on. This is humorously bad in the sense that you'd have to play elementals 4 times in a row for it to be a 4 mana 8/8. And considering that you'd have to play elementals 4 times in a row, that would mean you could only get this to be a 4 mana 8/8 on turn 5. If everything went perfectly, you played a turn 1, 2, 3, 4 elemental. This is outstandingly bad. I don't even know entirely what to say on how a card could be this bad. And then you got Thunderbringer, which is the card everyone got as a reward for early reward for the set. It's seeing some waves in Big Hunter right now. Pretty cool when you get Ragnaros and Neptune. Oh my god. And the elemental big colossal guy who I forget the name of, but it's big. And the big beast. But yeah, cool card. All in all, the neutral cards seem rather unremarkable. It gives me doubt that you can actually build a good excavate deck when the 2 neutral excavation neutral cards are like this. I don't see that many defining neutral cards. There's a lot of just general filler cards here, which will be decent arena cards, but won't realistically see play in constructed, I would say. The 2 cycles of the partners, as well as the Ogre gang. That's 6 of the neutral cards out of the way that aren't really good. The 1-drops are pretty good. And there's a decent amount of cards that generate cards, which are pretty good. Dry-Scale Deputy, Gold Panner, Howdy Finn, notably. But, yeah. I'd say, all in all, the neutral cards in this set aren't going to be defining of anything. They're just here. So, we look to the class cards to see basically the impact of the set. It's a set where I don't believe the neutral cards will have that much of an impact. So, we'll see about those class cards when they come out. I'd say Azurite Chain Gang probably has the most likely card to have a pretty big impact. All right, well, till next we meet with the class cards.